Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. We're going to talk about COVID and parenting. And I think we're at a point where I can say the word COVID without getting removed from the internet, or talk about disadvantages and problems with the pandemic without getting a strike from YouTube simply for mentioning that there could be negatives to the government response. You know, that was a pretty rough thing, and it plays into what's going to be a series. Let me adjust the camera slightly here. This is going to be a series of videos over some period of time. We're going to talk about kids. Some of it's going to be talking about my kids. Some of it's going to be talking about people I know or people I've known in the past. And some of the negative problems, negative consequences of the pandemic and of child rearing as time has gone on. It's not just the pandemic. Pandemic just kind of keyed things in a little bit more for some people. But there's some problems. And some enabling and some social enabling going on. And even structurally required enabling. And it's not always good. So I have a friend right now who's got children. So I have children also, and there's stuff that they're doing that's going to play into this, but I currently have a friend who has some children, and one of them is following a path that was followed a long time ago by a friend of mine. I guess he was a friend of mine. He was the older brother of one of my classmates in high school. He was several years older than us, 4 or 5, something like that. I think he was in his second senior year of high school when I was in my freshman year. So I went to school with his brother. We were friends. We'd been in school with each other since like 6th grade or something. Long time for me because I moved a lot. And so this freshman year of high school, he was in his second senior year. And the thing was that he had never made it through. He just couldn't finish the classes, do the assignments, do a final, show up for a final. He'd get anxiety, or he just wouldn't study, and so he wouldn't go because he wasn't good enough. And at his the first semester of his second senior year, he was very excited because he had a system and he was going to figure it out. And then the second semester, he was restarting because he dropped out of the first semester, started skipping. And he was very excited because this time was going to be it. It was going to make it. But nothing ever happened. He never did anything. His mother in particular was very enabling of every excuse that could be thrown out there to not do things. Very enabling. His third senior year, his second repeat, his third senior year, the school told him that it just wasn't going to happen anymore. They weren't going to have a 20-year-old senior in high school. They're just like, no, it's not going to happen. It could have, there's no legal thing at the time about it, but it was getting a little weird. It was the same system, same thing. And then he was going to get his GED, and there was a study program, and his mother said to stay home and not worry about anything, and she'd just handle everything while he did it, and then he never did it. And then he made a couple of false starts. Like every couple of months there would be a new system or a new intention or a new excitement, and then it would peter out, and he'd never actually take the test. It's not that he failed the test. We never knew if he was ready for the test because he never took the test. Every time it got to a point where someone was talking about scheduling the test, things just kind of fell apart, or anxiety happened, or it was too much effort to go to the office, or something, And this is in Scottsdale. Going to the office to do that was literally, for them, where they lived, 7 blocks. Yeah, 7 blocks. You'd go to the high school office, as a matter of fact, to do this, and it was 7 blocks. So, yeah, that's a thing. Well, he did actually have a couple of jobs, but they weren't really jobs. They were kind of like stuff that neighbors or friends said, hey, come do this and we'll pay you, and then he would kind of come, but it was too self-motivated. There was no boss structure, there was no show up at this time, so he never got through any of it. And it was pretty, it didn't work very well. His younger brother, Doug, did similar things and usually did pretty well. He'd get fired for overusing the spray nozzle to hose down passing cars. Exuberant stuff. But that I remember I was on that one, so that was actually kind of funny. Stuff like that would happen. But so Doug's brother, it never worked out. But he never got pushed. He never had to do anything. He never had to accomplish or finish anything. Great guy. We shared a lot of interests. So like I say, he was kind of one of my friends too, just because we had a lot of similar interest areas. Stuff that we could talk about that was pretty uncommon to talk about in my peer groups. So, that's just, it's at that point in time, knowing about one particular computer system was really weird, let alone computers in general, just one computer, like you were a Commodore 64 person, or you were a Coco person, or a VIC-20 person or something. That long ago, right? So that was a thing. And this, his mother, maybe early boomer, maybe late silent generation, that 40s, somewhere between 40 and 50 was the birth time, and technically the boomers are after 45, but she was born somewhere in that decade. So this isn't something that's particularly new, but she did pretty much the same thing, but she knew how to do the paperwork. Okay, he didn't know how to do the paperwork. She knew how to do the paperwork, so she had endless amounts of government assistance for college. She was perpetually in college, always working on a degree. At some point, she shifted to a graduate because she just had enough stuff that someone shoved a bachelor's on her, and stuff like that. She's always going to the meetings and doing the government assistance. They always had, food stamps. Food stamps were actually food stamps at the time. They always had food stamps. They always had more food stamps. I don't know how they got so many. I guess she did the paperwork for the brother when he was 18 and charged him a nominal $20 a month of rent or something, so he wasn't a dependent, or I don't know. I don't remember. I remember being curious about it, but I don't remember the details of what happened. But there was always plenty there, but it was almost a full-time job for her to do the government paperwork. So, that's what she did. He never got to that part either. So all of this is a really weird way of saying that a lot of people in the pandemic, a lot of kids, especially the teenage kids, got interrupted in their adulthood. And it's very hard for a lot of parents, pandemic parents, to get past that and say, okay, hey, it's time for everything to just go at the normal pace. Fish or cut bait, you got to do one of the other. You're fishing or you're cutting the bait, whatever. I know I'm mixing the metaphor, but I'd like it better with there's two jobs here, you can do one or you can do the other. So, I know people who are in a situation where they're being enabled like that, and it's don't get a job because you have something else to do. There's an excuse to not go get a job, and the problem with getting a job is that it's socially awkward. It's anxiety. The filling out the application online part is great, but the making a phone call, returning a phone call, scheduling an interview, talking to a person, no, that doesn't happen. That falls down or something. I can compare a couple of people that are in similar situations, and one just missed the pandemic. Okay, so he's just at the point of getting a job now, at the very end of 2022, and 3 days. Started job hunting, 3 days later, boom, employed. Not starting for a couple days because all the paperwork has, but that's how long it took. and someone else who was theoretically at the stage to get that first job at the lockdown, June of 2020, is currently unable to go to a business to check on a position without waiting 3 weeks to get everything sorted out and figured out, and this clothing and that clothing. There's like 3 weeks of excuses, by which time the manager who is going to talk to you about the position has hired someone else. So there's a problem, and it's not the fault of the kids. It's not even the fault of the parents. It's definitely a pandemic response problem. There was a lot of very fucked up shit that went very wrong, and this is part of it. But the kids and the parents need to fix it. And I am one of those parents, so there's stuff that I'm going to have to fix, And it's different for different age groups. I have younger kids where it's just a vastly different, there's key stuff that is missing, But there's a point to this where you have to move on. And I'm not sure how you address this. I'm not sure how you say this, okay? There are people out there with after a couple of years of pandemic responses, the idea of putting 6 hours of effort into stuff in a day is too much. I've had people tell me that they couldn't do job hunting because they had spent 1 hour studying, and 1 hour walking, and 1 hour doing a class, some sort of activity class, like a dance class or something. And even with the travel time and everything, that comes out to like 4 hours, and there's just no time or energy or mental space left to turn in an application at Panda Express. I hate Panda Express. I do not eat there. It's garbage food, but I'm just throwing something out there for a job. There is actually a labor shortage right now. Despite the economy, there's a labor shortage. And if you're not actually relying on that to pay your rent, because most of these kids are not relying on this to pay their rent, it's a step, it's a momentum. I talk about this in some of my videos. Momentum is a force of nature. If you get that first job and you are conscientious and you show up and you do the job, you start looking for a better job, these things work out. Now, it doesn't have to be a job, okay? Make money. You don't have to have a job to make money, but you have to do stuff, And for a lot of people right now, coming out of the pandemic, get a job is the first kind of step, like out of the house, in society, dealing with the idea of actually looking at people, like in person, not even talking to them, just looking at them. This is all very important stuff, and it's a set of skills that needs to be relearned. Like going to a grocery store is a skill that a lot of people have not relearned yet. I don't want the video to get too long because there's going to be a half a dozen of these videos. But there's a problem with the post-pandemic world with this cohort of children, the young adults. They're adults now. They were not quite adults in 2020. Some of them were 18 in 2020 and just getting started, but mostly in that range where, say, born between 2001 and 2005. Something like that, right? No, that's wrong. Maybe 99, 2000, I don't know, whatever. They're in that age range. I'm not doing the math very well in my head. No, that would be right. 2003 right now would be 1920, yeah, 2001, 2005, that age range. And they're stuck because of this. And that particular cohort Getting the classes, going to a vo-tech school or something is still not easy because you still have to deal with pandemic responses that are still in place. Just go get a job is very difficult for them. They got really hammered at a crucial phase of imprinting psychology, and they and you as a parent or you as a community member are going to have to help them work through that. One of the best things that you could do, if you're not a parent but you have a little spare cash, is offer some odd jobs. Encourage them, but do it gently. Do it without the work to make money. Do it as a get out of the house, do some stuff, get a little confidence going on. This is work as therapy. And that's actually what it is. It's work as therapy. If you're a parent, you might want to try to set up some of those situations, which is going to be difficult because a lot of the situations that you would set up are going to involve people who aren't going to understand the concept of the therapeutic need, and they're going to be like, work harder, and we're not there yet. We're at this imprint stage where it's almost like dealing with elementary school kids who are at a place where they're learning but they're not successful yet. You have to encourage the learning because a lot of the stuff just kind of went sideways. Sideways. And the social anxiety part, But if you're one of these kids, you need to figure out a way to get past some of the hurdles. Maybe it's volunteering for a day a week at the library. If you can do that. I don't know. Maybe you're not vaccinated. Maybe you're not this. Maybe you're not that. There's government restrictions on that. Volunteer at the VFW. Volunteer at the American Legion. Volunteer somewhere where you can. Get out and just meet some people. Get a job. Get the most basic, boring, ridiculous job you can. Go do the applications. If you're in this cohort, you may not have ever learned to write because computers are everywhere. Practice fill out an application. Just get some blank ones at Home Depot or something. It's $3. Practice filling out an application. Do one every day, do two some days, skip a day now and then, but just consistently go through that stack of blanks and write. Super cool. Make the phone calls. If they're not going to hire you, nothing you can do will embarrass you or embarrass yourself. So make the phone calls. Call and say, hey, I was looking for a job. What do I have to do to get an interview? If they say apply online, say, hey, yeah, I applied online. This is my confirmation number. This is the date I did it. I was kind of wondering if I could get an interview. It does help. It does work. It will actually work. One kid I know went and knocked on doors for a certain trade and got hired into that trade. The job didn't last forever. There were some social issues with performance of cultural norms. It was actually not a great fit. There was the whole thing about, getting a little too showy during one part of the year or something, and it got a little weird. But it worked. It got the job. From there, of course, it would have been really easy to go to any of the competing neighboring companies because this was on construction sites, and be like, hey, this is me. I'm looking for other stuff too. Just tell me if you need somebody, because this is kind of I don't like the way they're paying me, or I don't like the way they've set it up. You can work it. That's about it. I gotta end this video before I go too far and people get on my butt in the comments. Get out and do a little. Just remember, as a parent or as one of these people in this cohort, that there is something to be fixed, and that there is a concept of therapy, and that it is okay to put more than 12 hours a week of effort into your life. You're gonna have to get that one. Stay sideways.